6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Was the meeting properly announced?
Yes, it was.
Please rise for a moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nineteen members present, or they're excused.
We have the agenda before us. We have a motion to approve. Supervisor Edwards, second by Supervisor Scott Pease. Any discussion or questions on the agenda? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Agenda is approved. We have the September 20th county board minutes in the packet. We have a motion to approve by Supervisor Board. Second by Supervisor Carlson. Any discussion or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Minutes are approved. Don't have anybody signed up for public participation. Clerk, please read announcement of meetings.
Churchill 11550, Taylor 9613, Gilner 10625, Wimmer 21250, SPs 8125, Podolsky 95, Shady 17438, Dozel 8363, Trevilio 8125, Egersdorf 7750, Bork 9125, Edwards 75, RP 75, West 8375, Mullins 8250, Gaversky 8750, Carlson 9250, Krug 19750, Baker 100, McLaughlin 100, 2108.39.
Okay, thank you. We have no claims, correspondence, appointments, or unfinished business. Next, we'll go on to the 2021 audit presentation. And just so you're aware, if anybody supervisor would like a copy, we have paper copies up here. So just raise your hand and I'll bring them around to you if you want a paper copy. If not, it is attached. So, or you can pick one up if you want to take one at the end of the way out.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
please welcome Amber Danielski, signing director, state and local government, with Clifton, Larson, and Allen, here to present the 2021 audit.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Okay, that looks better. Okay, I'm gonna go through the financial statement packet and then probably one page in the federal award packet, but we'll just kind of go along. I'll reference page numbers. I know on the PDFs, if you're looking along on that, that might be a few pages off just here and there because of how it gets printed. But I'm going to start out just past the table of contents with the independent auditor's report. This report summarizes what our overall opinion on the financial statements were, what auditing standards we follow, management responsibilities, our responsibilities, and a few other just general required communications that we have to put in writing to the county board to summarize the audit. It starts out by going over our audit opinion. So for our audit, we audit the government activities, the business type activities, major funds, and then the sum of all the remaining smaller funds. And for this year was as of December 31st, 2021. In the second paragraph there, it states, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the county as of December 31st, 2021. What this means is that this was a clean opinion, which is what the county strived for in every single financial statement audit. We didn't find anything that was materially misstated that didn't ultimately get corrected when we proposed adjustments. We felt the financial statement disclosures properly represented the various activities and the various balances of the county's activities. The next section talks about our basis for our opinion. We follow regular auditing standards and governmental auditing standards as we design our tests for the audit. Management is responsible for preparing this packet of financial statements. We prepare the couple letters that are attached in here And as I'll discuss later, the county does contract with us to prepare the financial statements just for a cost benefit purpose. In terms of our audit, what our responsibilities are is to do risk assessment. Gain an understanding of the operations for the year, talk with management, board members, various department heads, just to get an understanding of what's going on throughout the county, to help us determine where we need to focus our testing on, where there's more of a chance that there could be a material misstatement. And from there, we design our tests. We can test samples, we can test, every single transaction in a certain area. Most of the time it's sample based, and so it could be anywhere from testing 5 transactions to 40 transactions, depending on what's going on. And from there, we determine whether or not there's entries needed to be made, or if we can move on, and then the balances that we tested are materially correct from our understanding what's going on. Any questions about that and our response, everybody's responsibilities in regards to the audit? Okay, then moving to the balance sheet for the governmental funds, this will be page 22. So for your governmental funds, these are the funds that are primarily funded by taxes and governmental aids and various user fees. Starting out on, page 21, I went one page too far. So this would be your general fund, your human services fund, and a few debt service and a couple other funds. We're just gonna start by talking about certain more significant funds. And then there's more detail in the back about some of the smaller funds that the county had. So at December 31st, 2021, the general fund had total assets of $23.6 million. The majority of this was in cash, and then taxes receivable that then would be shown as revenue in the next year when the levy goes into effect. And it's always that timing difference. You levy it in November, but it gets reported as revenue the next year. Then there were liabilities of $1.1 million. Primarily, this is going to be your accrued payroll at year end and accrued accounts payable at year end, stuff that just bills that came in January, February that related to last year. You'll see deferred inflows of $10,766,000. That is that tax levy that gets recorded as revenue in the next year. And the net difference of all that is your total fund balance. So your fund balance is $11.4 million, and it's broken down into various categories. So you'll see the non-spendable category, that's money that's been basically set aside, and it's not really as liquid. It's set aside because you used it to prepay insurances ahead of time for next year. Or it's tied up in delinquent taxes that haven't been paid yet, and so that amount will get used when that taxpayer actually pays that delinquent balance. The restricted category is when a third party or state statute tells you how you can use certain funds. So basically, a third party is restricting it, saying it needs to be used for X, Y, and Z. Your committed and assigned categories, that is items that the county board or management have determined we need to set aside a dollar amount for certain projects. And it, depending on which category it goes into, is basically determined on whether county board made a formal resolution or if it was done at management level. The unassigned line is basically everything else. This is what you use for cash flow purposes. This is what you use for unanticipated expenditures that arise during the next year, and whether it's this fund or other funds. So this year was at $7.7 million. And we consider that pretty healthy for your county, because it means you have adequate amounts to use to cover those unanticipated expenditures or cash flow. It meets your policies requirements, and it's 54% of last year's expenditures. So just for a guide, you have about half of the money that you would usually need in a given year for expenditures set in fund balance in case you would need it, in case other revenues come in short, or there's just expenditures higher than you anticipated. Any questions on the general fund? Okay, then briefly going through the next few funds, the Human Services Fund, you had just under $4 million of total assets, and then liabilities of 1.4, and then deferred taxes coming in at 2.4. You will see that there's still a deficit in Human Services Fund. It's $53,000. The fund was able to replenish some of that deficit from the previous year. So it's trending in the right direction for that fund. Your County Roads and Bridges Fund, so your local roads and snow and ice control, you have $4.2 million in assets and 3.4 in deferred taxes. So you have $805,000 remaining to use for additional road projects, snow and ice control, those type of items in that fund. The debt service fund, you'll see at $7.4 million in assets. And you'll see that a chunk of that is an advance to other funds. This is the advance to solid waste for the, related to the debt that was taken out and will be repaid by the solid waste fund. There's a preliminary schedule set up, ultimately hoping to be repaid by the time the debt has to be paid off. But that amount does, you know, it's kind of set out specifically, because even though it's part of your $7.2 million fund balance in that fund, it's not really liquid for you to use to pay debt. The remaining $3 million you can use to pay debt in the current year, but the other amount is tied up dependent on when solid waste pays you back. Any questions on those funds? Okay, then moving on to the next page, you have your capital projects fund. There's $7.4 million in assets at the end of the year and 6.4 in fund balance. This is the fund where you had your major courthouse improvements run through and various other capital projects for various different departments running through here. So there's $6.4 million set aside for future capital projects. Your other governmental funds, this is the sum of all the smaller funds. And I do want to point out, there's $1.8 million in your unearned revenues there in your other governmental funds. This is the unspent ARPA money as of the end of the year. When that money gets spent now in 22, then it will be shown as revenue to offset those expenditures. And that is only the portion that was collected in 21 that wasn't spent. Any questions on those funds? Okay, then moving to page 24, this is your income statement for these governmental funds. You have your revenues, expenditures, and then there's this other category called other financing sources and uses. This is where sometimes you transfer money from one fund to the other, or if you took out long-term debt, this is where that amount would show up if you did something like that. So your general fund had $16.6 million in revenues, primarily in taxes and intergovernmental aids. That intergovernmental aids is going to be your shared revenue and personal exempt computer aid and those type of items. You'll see public charges for services of $2 million. This is where the parks user fees are included among other user fees. You had total expenditures of $14.4 million, primarily in general government and public safety, which is usually what you would expect to see where you know you spend the majority of your budget. Overall, after transferring out $600,000 to other funds, you end up with a growth in your general fund balance of $1.6 million. Any questions on the general fund? Okay, so then in human services down at the bottom, you see that net change in fund balance. This is where I mentioned that the human services fund was able to recoup a good chunk of the deficit it had started for the beginning of the year. This came from just some revenues being over budget, exceeding budget expectations, and some expenditures just being under budget. And there's more budget statements here in this packet if you are interested to see more specifics on that. County roads and bridges increased by about $50,000 and debt service decreased about $70,000. Moving to page 25, you'll see your capital project fund decreased about $2.8 million. This was just use of other funds, the debt proceeds from the prior year towards the project, and just planned spending for that fund. Overall, your governmental funds, you have $27.1 million in ending fund balance when you add all your governmental funds together. Any questions on the governmental funds before I switch gears to the highway and solid waste enterprise funds? Okay, so then moving to page 32, this is your income statement for your highway enterprise fund and your solid waste enterprise fund. So we had total operating revenues in your highway fund of $7 million, offset by expenditures of just about the same. So you're with operating income of about $94,000. There was some miscellaneous revenues that also helped increase your fund balance. So overall, your county highway department enterprise fund increased fund balance about $200,000. The majority of that $7.4 million at the end of the year is tied up in capital assets. So the highway shop building, the plow trucks, various other equipment. Some of that is not all used up in that amount, but a bulk of it is. For solid waste, he had operating revenues of $4.5 million, operating expenses of 4.2, leading to positive operating income of $300,000. Then in addition to that operating revenue being operating income, excuse me, you also had some property taxes allocated to the fund and sales tax allocated to that fund. So overall, that fund increased by $1.4 million. And again, this fund also has a lot tied up in capital assets as well. because you include the landfill cells, the buildings, the equipment, the trucks, all that is tied up in part to your, so not all that $8.1 million is liquid to be used towards operations. Any questions on that page? Okay, so then moving to page 33, this is the cash flow statement. So looking at these two funds purely from a cash in and cash out perspective, broken down by the various categories. So the first category is cash flows from operating activity. So this is the cash coming in or cash going out specifically related to actually providing the services. So actually, you know, for the road maintenance costs, for example, for highway. So you had 7.1 come in from billings to the state and billings to other municipalities. But then you paid 1.5 million out in employee benefits and salaries. And then you paid suppliers $5.3 million. Leading, so your cash increased by 250,000 from operations. Then there were some miscellaneous revenues of $100,000, $110,000. And so you got some non-operating revenue cash coming in. And then you spent $346,000 in buying capital assets, buying trucks, buying various equipment. So overall, you got cash in, but then you spent it, so your cash only increased by $23,000 for the highway fund. Moving then to solid waste, similar concept, you got $4.3 million in collections from the municipalities and the residents for the garbage collection, landfill collections, all that type of items. You spent or you paid out in cash $1.1 million in salaries and benefits. And then you paid suppliers $2.2 million. So you did have positive growth of cash coming in of $980,000 from operating activities. Then you had that cash from the taxes, sales tax and property taxes. But then you also had this cash advance from general fund, $827,000. During the year, in order to make payments on capital assets, make payments just for cash flow purposes, you got an advance, that fund got an advance of $827,000 from the general fund to be able to pay their bills timely. So that's why that amount shows an increase of $1.7 million. Then due to the various projects of it, solid waste, you spent $1.9 million on capital assets. So trucks, the new cell, finishing the building, various items like that. You did pay back the general fund, $740,000 on that advance related to the debt. But overall, for capital and financing activities, you spent $2.7 million. So, and then you got some interest on the restricted cash that's required to have, for you to have in the DNR. And so your cash overall only increased $60,000 in the solid waste fund during the year. Any questions on that? Or any questions on the financial statements before I kind of switch gears and talk about the sink audit and the various findings we had? Okay, I don't see any. Kyle, can you bring up the sink audit report? If not, I can just briefly go over it without it.
Page you're reading, yeah.
Go to page 16, the schedule of findings and question calls. Yeah, the header says schedule of findings and audit costs, and then it talks about summary of auditors results. Okay.
I bumped the HDMI. Sorry.
No, that happens. That was me this morning on my own computer. So this page, I just want to go over because it kind of summarizes all the results on whether or not we had findings or if the opinions were modified or not for both the single audit and the financial statement. So the first part talks about your financial statement. There was an unmodified auditor's report, but we did identify some significant deficiencies in internal control over financial reporting that we did write up and put into this report for you to be aware of. They're the same findings we've had in prior years where the county outsources the preparation of the financial statement to us for cost benefit purposes, but it is the responsibility of management to prepare. So it's considered a significant deficiency in internal control for reporting. And then we had, I believe there was just And then the same thing goes for the single audit report. Those financial statements, schedules that summarize your federal grants and your state grants, those are also management's responsibility to prepare. But like most counties, most municipalities, you contract with your auditors to help prepare. But an important part of oversight is your review of those documents and then management's review of those documents. For the federal awards, we did not, the only finding we had was the finding of us helping to help you prepare those reports. Again, it's nothing necessarily unusual. There's lots of counties and municipalities throughout the country that hire their auditors to help with that. We tested one major program. We tested medical assistance. And the result of that testing is we didn't have any compliance findings or internal control findings specifically for that program. We don't test every single federal program that you get, every single grant that you get from the federal government for that during the year. We only have to test a certain percentage of it. And this year, medical assistance met that requirement, and we didn't have any issues with that program. Moving then to page 17, in the state of Wisconsin, when you have a federal single audit, you have to have a state single audit. And so then they make us test state aid you get. Now, not every state aid you get is required to be tested. So like those shared revenue or your general transportation aid, those don't get reported in here. We don't have to test them, but sometimes you get different grants. You might get snowmobile grants, ATV grants. Land conservation will get stuff, human services get stuff, and those are the ones the state wants us to test. And as a result of our testing, we did have one finding. It was in the for one grant in aging, recommending that there's some extra layers of review and reporting get implemented, but nothing that would be significantly different that would alter the amounts that were expended. And you'll see here, there's a list of about 8 programs that we tested on the state side. And other than that one issue with the reporting, we didn't have any issues, and it was a clean opinion on the single audit report. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
Supervisor Hilton.
So in one of the comments or one of the sections, it talked about the oversight. It sounds like repeat issues on some of the concerns. First year, so I don't have any background on it. But one of the things that stood out to me was around like the ARPA funds. It is, I think, called out by you in particular, saying that we doubled some of those dollar amounts.
That was the previous year.
That was previous year.
That was the previous year's audit. And it's kind of the same recommendation. I'll just kind of just mention it overall, because it's usually something we always just look at is you always want to have a second pair of eyes looking at stuff. And that's basically what led to that is there was just a clerical error that picked up something twice, that adding somebody else looking at it before you hit the submit button
Fixes it, yeah.
could catch it at least. It's not guaranteed to catch it, but you have a better chance of catching it when somebody with fresh eyes looks at something versus just one person. So we did not, because with that year, there wasn't any repeat funding this year, so we didn't have to test the program again. But it is something we look at with all these grants. Is there enough? And so like this year, the one finding, there was the DOT grant for elderly transportation. It was another situation where one person was submitting the stuff quarterly, but nobody was double checking it to match the spread documentation before it got sent to the state. And when we were looking at it, there were differences.
The last question I have, and I don't know if it's appropriate at this point, but in our response, as in counties, some of the timelines on that was 2025 for correction. Is that normal for it to take 3 years, or did we just have a typo, or?
Yeah, take it.
Jump it.
Yeah, so the ones that you're referring to, those would be the ones that are repeat findings, like preparing the financial statements and that type of stuff. We currently use Skyward as our ERP system. We're trying to work through some of the issues with Skyward to be able to actually create our own. There is a upgrade for Skyward that we're going to be looking into potentially, and hopefully we could get there, but like the county of our size and the ERP system that we have, it's just better for the auditors to prepare those for us.
So, and again, I'm not trying to be difficult, just trying to understand, why does it take 3 years to correct some of those issues. Or 2 years, I guess, we're not, we moved 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, there's just a lot that goes into preparing all of that, and right now, the cost benefit is just having the auditors prepare it for us. It's just more cost effective for having them prepare it for us.
Right. And most counties of our size do have the auditors prepare that, so it's always gonna be a lot of fine.
Right.
On the financial statements.
Right, I was just curious why it was taking so long to put in place the corrections for those audits, I guess, is the way I read it. Maybe I read it incorrectly, but.
It's something that like, if the county, what we've seen with other counties that decide that they want to prepare this stuff, it's kind of a multi-year process. They might start with preparing certain schedules because it's easier, because their accounting system doesn't necessarily work as smoothly to gather all the data. So it sometimes just takes that long to kind of develop schedules, develop reports you can run out of the system, especially in terms of also keeping up with the general day-to-day activities. So what we usually see is if a county does want to switch to start preparing it, it's a multi-year process, even if they started now, there's things you can prepare as you move forward, but it just takes that many years to develop the background data to get it.
So to clarify, the reason it's gonna take 3 years is basically we're saying we're gonna have a third-party service provide that service for another 3 years. Is that a good summary?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, maybe longer.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you and have a good evening.
Next, economic development report.
I'll answer questions if anyone has.
Any questions for Derek? No, Supervisor Mullins? Derek, if you want to come up and use the microphone, so.
Any continuing discussion at the industrial park?
What's that?
You had reported a couple of months ago that there were two parties talking about the industrial park. Is there anything?
Yes, sir.
continuing?
No, I've still not gotten a response back from the city, on whether those two types of businesses are allowed to go in there or not, unfortunately. So that's something I'm still working on. I just can't seem to get a response on that. So we're still working on it, but I don't know if those are allowed in that park with the EDA dollars that went into that or not.
Supervisor Chafee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Could you maybe,
Microphone up?
sorry. Could you maybe elaborate on what those funds can go towards? Because it's manufacturing, commercial, industrial on the sign, right?
Funds, are you talking about
The
county?
the EDA,
That was between, so the EDA dollars were used, there were some EDA dollars used to build that industrial park, and the EDA at that time had an agreement with the city on what types of businesses could or could not go in there. So I believe it's commercial businesses and industrial businesses.
not manufacturing.
Manufacturing should be fine. The issue that we're still running into is when that park was built, the city came up with a list of types of businesses that are allowable. And there were probably 30 to 40 different types of businesses that were listed as allowable. What has happened in the meantime is the city has looked at that list and said, okay, this is what's allowable. The list was not created with the intent to mean that only those types of businesses are allowable. Those were just examples. In the intervening years, it has been taken to mean that these are the types of businesses that are allowable and nothing else is. So it's been a process of trying to work through that, and it's been dragging on for a long time, but manufacturing, industrial, commercial should all be allowed. the challenge we're running into is everything on the list that the city came up with, and this was probably 10, 15 years ago, is extremely specific, like rope factory. You know, I mean, very, very nailed down and specific. So we're still trying to work through that. The people that were in place in the city that worked with the EDA at that time are no longer there. The files are not around or can't be found, and the folks at the EDA that were part of that project are no longer with the EDA either. So it's been no fun at all.
Thank you.
Other questions, Mayor? Thanks, Derek.
Thank you.
I know we talked before about Sand Valley.
Mhm.
Derek, what, December maybe?
December, they said they were fine. Yep.
Okay, okay, thank you. Then we'll move on to county manager's report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. On page 1, I start out with accolades going to Justin Grant and Land and Water team. And that team is made up of Anna James, Kyle Kettner, Charles Sidilski, Megan Steckelberg, Carolyn Crowley. And they're being recognized for their great customer service and high quality work. So again, special thanks to Justin Grant and his Land and Water team. Capital projects, courthouse related, doors anticipated to be completed by the end of the year. HVAC controls, replacing the pneumatics with new digital system. We started on the community center in late September. Fairgrounds currently being winterized. Boardroom audio visual is anticipated to be completed by the end of November. We go on to page 2, Veterans Memorial, anticipated completed before the end of the year. County Highway M, have some bad news. We did not get the infrastructure BIL funds. We are moving forward with with County M being a single project 2-phase. And we're also trying to fund it without debt at this point. So we are looking into that using reserves. And we go into happenings, Adams County Courthouse Security Assessment field work was performed on Friday, September 23rd. I just received the report, so I have some reading to do, and I'm hoping to present that to the committee, that's appropriate committee. And below that, we had our first annual department head retreat. Lyanne is actually trying to push somebody over there in that photo. Okay. And it was at Castle Rock Park. And special thanks to Tabitha Murphy, Doug King, and Bill Runnels, and others for putting everything together. It was a successful event. We skip on to page 4 at the bottom, near the bottom, September 22nd. I attended the Adams County Economic Development, and I want to share a couple of things with you. A housing developer moving forward with their 3rd phase in Rome and is potentially interested in starting a project here in the city of Adams. Rome experienced a 7.19% growth. You'll hear that again in the budget presentation for 2023. And also Rome's tax incremental district, which is known as TIDS, will term early. It's anticipated to term early, so 2027 versus 2032. And that concludes my report.
Questions for the county manager? Supervisor Driscoll?
When will we have something nailed down on County Road M?
What was that?
When will we have something nailed down for County Road M? Start dates. I know you've got, now we pushed it back to 2024. It was supposed to be completed in 2023.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So it's anticipated to start 2023 and then finish in 2024.
Read your notes, but what I'm asking is that changed from previous announcements where it was supposed to be completed in 2023?
Mr. Chair, there was a 2023 start. It was originally, when this originally came about, that we were going to do 6 phases and combine it into one project, 2-phase. That was a 2-year period. We are dependent on utilities getting out there. So we're ready for phase 1, if you will. It's like a 1.5 million phase. But the 2nd phase is the one we're a little concerned about because we are dependent on utilities getting their stuff done and they're not done for phase 2.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the budget presentation. Assume Kyle's gonna take care of this.
I'm just getting this. Oops. Thanks. All right, I took a page out of Cynthia's book and put all my notes here, so. All right, so first, we're just gonna start off with a statement that the budget is balanced. Also, just some general housekeeping for everybody. Please make notes on your questions and we'll field the questions at the end of the presentation. If you need me to go back to a particular slide to help with your question, I'll do so. Did it move forward on here? Okay, perfect. All right, so first we're gonna look at what the timeline looks like for the budget. So as early as May is when the budget process begins. Departments that have capital budgets are provided with the capital worksheets for them to review and update. In June, the Administrative and Finance Committee sets the budget direction. Typically, this is directing departments to maintain their levy ask at no increase and to set what the wage increases will be. Retirement rates are set by the state and insurance rates are set by our insurance provider. Department heads are also given budget instructions, packets, and supplemental documents to assist in developing their budgets. During July and August, departments are asked to complete their request, and this is just putting their numbers in, or their asks for their budget. In September, we'll hold meetings with each department head, the county manager, finance director, and human resources director. And these meetings are to evaluate the departmental ask for the budget and to determine a methodology for budgeting expenses and revenues. We'll typically look at using a 5-year average of actual expenses. So we'll look back and just kind of average out those expenses and also the revenues. By October, it brings us to where we are now. We're doing a budget presentation to highlight the major changes in the 2023 budget. First presentation is given to admin and finance, and we did that a couple weeks ago, and then to the county board. At the November county board meeting, we then will adopt the budget. Along with the budget adoption, we also have to complete apportionment worksheets. The apportionment worksheets are due November 15th every year. This year, November 15th happens to fall on the third Tuesday of the month, so that's when the county board meeting is going to be held. Typically, we end up having it a week early, most Novembers. All right, so the county tax levy, excluding adjustments for library and county road and bridge aid. So library and county road and bridge aid is not included in this. It's $18,540,838, which is an increase close to $500,000. The library tax levy is $494,965, which is an increase of $14,541. So as we have a county library, municipalities with their own public libraries are exempt from the libraries portion of tax levy, and those municipalities are Town of Rome to the north and the city of Wisconsin Dells. We just have small portions of the city of Wisconsin Dells in the county. The county bridge aid levy is $5,212, which is a decrease of $8,621. This levy is derived from the petitions received from towns for the construction or repair of bridges or culverts. The highest it's been in recent years was 2015. It was just over $100,000. Sometimes the projects come in under what the towns actually petitioned us for. In those cases, we then just apply the fund balance to use for other town petitions. The counties received one petition in 2022 from the town of Preston. The cities of Wisconsin Dells, Adams, and the village of Friendship are exempt from the county bridge aid levy. The debt service levy is maintained at the same level. In the past, the counties levied $168,130 for debt service. This levy is exempt from the levy limit laws. So this equates to a county-wide mill rate of about $5.62 per $1,000 of valuation. The mill rate will fluctuate based on the municipality. And what the mill rate means is that for every $1,000 of valuation, the county receives $5.62. So someone with a $100,000 home will have a county tax portion of about $562. But remember, those are the county taxes only. There's going to be other taxing entities on the tax bill, such as the local school district, tech college, town, village, or city. We're going to cover historical mill rates later on. The county's net new construction was 2.832%. So the net new construction is how many new structures were put on the properties to add value. So this is a number that's provided by the State Department of Revenue, and this number is important as it's how much we're legally allowed to raise the tax levy. As stated earlier, there's items that are exempt from the amount we can raise, which is the library tax levy, the debt service levy, and the county bridge aid levy. Well, there may be a dollar amount increase in tax levy. That does not mean that the mill rate is going to increase. The mill rate is actually decreasing by about 72 cents and will be lower than $6 for the first time since the 2008 tax bills. The mill rate decreases while the amount of levy increases due to large growth of equalized value. In fact, the equalized value is actually over $3 billion for the first time ever in the county. So the county's total levy is going to be $19,209,145. So this is a total increase of about $517,419. And this is just the detail from the state for the net new construction in all municipalities in the county. You can see that the net new construction right at the bottom, there's the bold line there. It was 2.83%. So this is the average across all the municipalities, and it's a weighted average based on their equalized value. The town of Rome is the only municipality to exceed the countywide average. You'll also see that the town of Leola, they actually had negative new construction. We're just kind of assuming that there was some structures that were torn down throughout the year, causing it to have a negative net new construction. All right, so I'm just going to go through some graphs. So this first graph is going to show the equalized value going back to 2008. And you can see the value actually plateaued back between 2008 and 2009, and then had a steady decline up until 2013. And from there, you can see a steady incline up until 2022, where we had a rather large increase. So this could potentially be an indicator for a potential downturn into the economy, similar to the housing crisis back in 2010. A lot of the equalized value is primarily due to the town of Rome. Town of Rome is the only municipality to have net new construction exceeding the countywide average, just stating that again. This next graph, this shows the mill rate. So the mill rate is essentially the inverse of the equalized value. So where the equalized value had its valley in 2013, the mill rate actually had its peak. You can see where it peaked there. The mill rate's been steadily declining since 2013, with its largest decrease being for the 2022 tax bills payable in 2023. And then this last graph just shows the amount levied for the 2023 budget. While there is an increase in levy, there isn't as sharp of fluctuations like you see in the prior graphs. The burden for the tax levy increase shifts to properties that made improvements in the year, which then increases their property value. All right, so moving on to what's actually in the budget. So the salary schedule, we've aged that by 4%. So this means there's a 4% increase in wages. This is a standard adjustment to account for inflation. The county, we typically use the Midwest Consumer Price Index, or CPI, for year-over-year increase for the month of April to adjust for wages. So April of 2022 had a CPI increase of 8.6%. We're currently behind the CPI trends because we're only doing 4%, not the 8.6. Just to provide a visual of the Midwest CPI, this is just a graph showing the cumulative wage increases. So on the blue line going back to 2018, you'll see the Midwest CPI using April again as the measurement month. So you can see that with the 2023 budget year, there's a large gap due to the sharp increase in CPI from April 2021 to April 2022. So then the Wisconsin retirement system, or WRS rates, those increased by 0.3% to 6.8% for general county employees and elected officials. Rates increased by 1.2% to 13.2% for protected employees. That's mainly just sheriff's deputies. So you can see the rates shown here, and this is just screenshots directly from the WRS website. All right, the insurance renewal with Group Health Trust increased by 5%. The county's responsibility for a single plan is $612.51, and a family plan is $1,619.01. The county covers 85% of health insurance premiums. So the impact for an employee on the family plan is going to be $13.58 per month more in cost. For an employee on the single plan, the increase is $5.12. So it's also important to point out that while salaries are increased by 4% and health insurance is increased by 5%, this does not mean that an employee is making 1% less. So ignoring all other variables and just looking at the cost of living increase and the insurance increase, we can kind of run a hypothetical of an employee who's making $40,000 in 2022. They'll then be making $41,600 in 2023, so an increase of $1,600. The annual increase to the family health insurance premium would be just under $163. So an employee would still see a net wage increase. So in this hypothetical, it's a 3.6% net increase. And then we're also taking a new approach on replacing fleet vehicles. We'll be trying to replace them every 2 years. Currently, though, with supply chain issues, this may prove to be difficult. Everybody utilizing the government rates on vehicles and selling them off after 2 years, we can accomplish two things. We wouldn't need to perform as much maintenance on them, and the resale of the vehicles could be equal to the original purchase price of the vehicles. Our intent is to lessen the dependence on the tax levy and fund the vehicles through purchase and resale. And this is only mainly going to be for vehicles that are minimally modified. So sheriff's department vehicles, we wouldn't really be applying this strategy to. We have a planned reduction of the general fund unassigned fund balance in the budget. So the audit presentation said that we have about $7.7 million as of 12/31/21. So that's about 50% of 2022's budgeted expenditures. The Governmental Financial Officers Association, or GFOA, recommends an unassigned fund balance of approximately 2 months of expenditures, or around 16% of the general fund expenditures. So our fiscal policies, they actually state an unassigned fund balance of between 15 to 20% is the minimum required. So we're looking to get the unassigned fund balance to around 30%, or about $4.7 million. In the departmental budgets of the general fund, there will be a fund balance applied as the funding source and transfer to capital project fund. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that in the budgets that were presented at the committees. So we're funding the capital projects through the unassigned fund balance of the general fund, and then going forward, we're going to continue to assess the unassigned fund balance as a source of funds for capital projects. Should we not have enough unassigned fund balance in excess of the 30% target in the general fund, then we're going to look towards debt service as a source of funds. The debt service will have county sales tax dollars in the fund balance. All right, and these are just some graphs relating to the fund balance. So this first graph shows the general fund expenditures from 2013 to 2022. The general fund expenditures are, again, what we use as the measurement against our fund balance. This graph just shows the general fund unassigned fund balance over time in the blue shaded area. So the horizontal axis is the year ending, and that blue area represents the dollar amount compared to the red area of total general fund expenditure. So for the year ending 2021, there's approximately $7.7 million in unassigned fund balance. From 2018 to 2019, you can see that there was a large decrease in the unassigned fund balance. So right there in the middle. That is due to a transfer to the building project fund in the amount of $5.4 million that funded the building expansion and remodel. So looking at the general fund expenditures, you can see that there's a fairly significant decrease from 17 to 18. So the red shaded area is where we're looking. So in 2018, we had created the capital funds and shifted those general fund expenditures to capital funds. So we didn't have as much budgeted in the general fund. All right, now we're going to move on to the percentages of the unassigned fund balance. So you can see again the sharp decline from 2018 to 2019 due to the transfer to the building fund. The fund balance has been climbing steadily though since 2019. The minimum required fund balance was in 2013 and 2014, and then it was 15% thereafter, and these are minimum balances that the board puts out there as part of fiscal policies. So this budget is going to be spending down the unassigned fund balance by making transfers to the capital project funds in the amount of about $2.3 million. So this will bring the fund balance to around 34% of general fund expenditures. And I'm just going to overlay what our policy requirement is. So you can see the red shaded areas, what our policy requirement is. So back in 13 and 14, it was slightly higher, and then it decreased to 15% where it's at now. All right, so staffing changes is the next thing that we're going to look at. And first, we're just going to cover staffing changes within the general fund. So within the clerk of courts and register and probate budget, there were some changes to help accommodate the additional need due to having 2 judges and to help with the department's request of having an added position. So we're adding a full-time position that will serve as the clerk of juvenile court. And this is the position that last month, I believe, where there was a budget amendment for. And this is funded mainly through tax levy. We're eliminating the part-time clerk typist position in the community service program. And then the last change in the clerk of courts department is that we're reclassifying full-time community services coordinator position to a clerk of courts deputy position. So it's just a moving a position over into a different role. The Parks Department, they are adding a full-time assistant park manager for Peatwell Park. And this is to help accommodate for the increase in visitors and other maintenance items due to finishing up the west expansion area of Peatwell Park. So this position will be funded through the Parks revenues. The Parks Department is not on the tax levy, and they only use a small amount of sales tax for capital improvements. So there's no tax levy in their operating fund, but there's just a little bit of sales tax to fund their capital. So yeah, just to reiterate, they actually generated operating profit within the general fund. And one other department, which we actually forgot to mention this at admin and finance. So my slide probably doesn't line up here. At the county clerk's office, they're eliminating 1 full-time position, and we'll be budgeting slightly more for on-call just to help out for elections and county board and stuff like that. In the 2022 budget, there were 3 total positions for the county clerk's office, but for much of the year, it's just been the 2 full-time positions. In UW Extension, the part-time clerk typist position was decreased to 1,040 hours from 1,170 hours, so a decrease of just 130 hours. And moving on to Health and Human Services Fund. There's an added behavioral health therapist to help with the increased need for mental health services within the Comprehensive Community Services Program, or CCS program. This position is not supported by tax levy and will be funded through Medicaid billing and Wisconsin Medicaid cost reconciliation, or WMCR. The part-time public health support specialist position has been eliminated through attrition, and the job duties have been absorbed elsewhere within the department. And the solid waste department is eliminating through attrition a full-time equipment operator / truck driver. And this is based on efficiencies that have been gained by moving to carts and automated trucks throughout the county. All right, and now we're just going to cover some general budgeting changes. First, within the general fund departments, and a lot of these are just combining and simplifying the budget process and to help accommodate structural changes within the county. So for planning and zoning, they had a couple changes. Rather than be listed as their own departments, the surveyor and GIS budgets have been moved under planning and zoning. They're still broken out separately from the other areas under planning and zoning. The only change is the department code used in budgeting. In clerk of courts, we're combining a few departments. The register and probate and family court commissioner budgets were moved under the clerk of courts budget. And similar to planning and zoning, you'll still see those broken out separate from the other areas in clerk of courts. The only change is the department code used in budgeting. And within human resources and the county managers departments, the confidential administrative assistant is budgeted entirely in human resources rather than being split between those 2 departments. There's no significant differences with how the position is utilized. It's just cleaning up the budgeting aspect of the position as both departments fall within the general fund. Within the solid waste department, we're just combining 3 different cost centers into one, as they're not truly different. Those 3 cost centers perform essentially the same functions using the same staff and the same equipment. the shop services, mainly the equipment used in those cost centers. So it's the waste collections for towns, garbage and refuse collection, and shop. Those three cost centers are just being combined into one. All right, next we're gonna go over capital projects by department. We're just going over the major projects planned for 2023. For any planned projects beyond next year, you'll want to refer to the capital project worksheets. They're gonna be located towards the back of the budget book when it's available. Capital items are larger costs that fall outside of the normal maintenance of facilities and grounds or operating budget. The capital project worksheets have also been provided to committees at their October meetings, and the total spend across the county is roughly $16 million. So within the maintenance department, we plan to replace all three vehicles. One vehicle is an SUV for servicing outlying departments such as highway and solid waste. The other two vehicles are trucks. One of them has a plow on it. We plan to replace the courthouse and law enforcement center roofs, and the estimate for the roofs has increased drastically over the past couple of years, and we've adjusted the capital budgets to reflect this. And one of them. Oh. There we go. All right. Now I'm caught up. Chip sealing at the community center parking lot. This is just a regular maintenance item. However, it is a large expense, close to about $200,000. That will further the life of the parking lot. We plan to upgrade the lighting at the fairgrounds to LED lights. There's a number of smaller items at the fairgrounds that will be addressed through the operating budget. Sheriff's Department will be replacing 5 squad car radios in 2020. And this will be an ongoing schedule until all 33 radios have been replaced. And the radios have a lifespan of roughly 10 years. Upgrades to the dispatch phone system will be mostly funded through the Next Gen 911 grant. And this is related to the resolution that was passed earlier this year, designating the Adams County Sheriff's Department as the 911 answering point. Sheriff's Department's also going to be replacing some vehicles. Typically every year they replace 4 squads and 1 administrative vehicle. Within the emergency management department, there's going to be some major upgrades to radio communication channels that will move all encrypted transmissions and will increase the channel capacity. And as part of a potential cost savings initiative that we're going to be renewing our managed print services, which will entail replacing most devices and consolidating the devices that are infrequently used. HHS is going to hopefully be replacing all 10 vehicles in 2023. Again, this is the possible cost savings that we talked about earlier. Because we're purchasing the vehicles at a government discount, and then we're able to resell those vehicles after only 2 years and potentially get our money back that we paid for them. So we essentially use the vehicles for 2 years and just pay for maintenance and fuel, hopefully, if we're able to. The parts department will be replacing 3 trucks in 2023. There we go. All right, Castle Rock's gonna be adding a new shop building for storing and maintaining equipment. Eatonwell will be continuing their expansion project that they started this year. So there's gonna be adding water and electric to sites that do not have those amenities and building a dump station on the western expansion area. Both parks are gonna be replacing their vault toilets. And we're just gonna upgrade the new vault toilets. There's gonna be construction of erosion control measures at Sherwood and Camelot boat launches. Peatwell Park will be blacktopping about $250,000 worth of roads in 2023, and this will be just to replace existing blacktop that's currently deteriorating. Land and Water will be replacing all 4 of their vehicles in 2023, and will continue replacing all vehicles every other year. And then there's some major repairs needed on the Pottenville Dam at a rough estimate of about $250,000. So we have that worked into the capital budget. And these repairs were identified through an audit conducted by the state. This was discussed at the October Land and Water and Utica Extension Committee meeting, which is available on the county YouTube page if you want further information on that. And then planning and zoning, they're going to be replacing both of their vehicles as well. Solid waste. So they're going to be purchasing a split body automated truck. And this is going to allow them to pick up garbage and recycling from the same vehicle rather than sending out 2 vehicles. So some of those municipal contracts that they have, they need to be able to just take care of those in 1 vehicle, garbage and recycling. And then they're also gonna be finishing up the necessary permitting and engineering for the vertical expansion of the landfill. This isn't gonna make a larger footprint on the landfill, but it's gonna allow us to then pile garbage on top of the existing footprint. Highway department's last part that we're gonna be covering for the capital projects. So the first thing, they're gonna be seal coating about approximately 12 miles of various county highways. They also plan to mill and overlay about 1 mile of County Highway double C and just under a mile of County Highway double X. County M is still planned to be started in 2023. So it's going to be accomplished through potentially an issuance of debt, but as Cynthia mentioned earlier, we're trying to avoid issuing debt. We may end up utilizing fund balance from the highway department and other funding sources potentially. And the department also plans to replace a tractor, a boom mower, and a pickup in 2023. So this is just replacement equipment. And they also plan to replace the salt storage roof at solid waste. And then equipment additions. So they're going to add a trailer and a vacuum trailer for pumping out the storm sewer at County Z and at the wash bay. All right, so capital projects is all done. Now we're just going to go over some graphs here. So this first chart is showing where all the revenue sources are coming from that are in the county-wide 2023 budget. So all departments, all cost centers, general fund, highway, solid waste, health and human services. So you see the property tax levy accounts for the greatest share of the funding sources at about 25% of total revenues. Maybe that blue sliver there it takes up a quarter of it. This is followed by intergovernmental charges, which are charges to other governments for items like road plowing and garbage collection. That's just under 20%. Then next is the other financing sources category at around 16%. For the 2023 budget year, this is mainly going to be transfers from the general fund and the proceeds from debt issuance for the highway department. We do have the debt issuance for the highway department worked into the budget as worst case scenario. And that's why I keep bringing that up with the highway department. I just want to point out the percentages on here don't add up to 100% due to some rounding on there. So similar to the previous chart, this one's just showing the expenditure categories. So the largest spending categories in public works at just under 38% of the total expenditures. And this is due mainly to the larger budget with highway and the large projects they are completing, such as County M. Solid waste department also falls under this category, along with some smaller spending categories such as the airport. And the next largest category is health and human services at just under 18%. And this category is not only the health and human services department, but also includes expenditures from the sheriff's department and veteran services department. And later on, we're going to be showing each department's levy dependency. Again, with this graph, the percentages don't add up to 100% due to rounding on here. All right. So then this bar graph here is showing a comparison of 2022's countywide budgeted revenues versus 2023. So all the way on the left side is the dollar amount, and on the bottom shows what category each bar represents. So you can see a large jump in intergovernmental charges from 2022 to 2023. Where is it? Fourth one over on the right there. That large jump is due to increased anticipated revenues for the highway department. Further to the right, you can see a large jumps in other financing sources and fund balance applied. And this goes back to how we're utilizing the general fund unassigned fund balance in the 2023 budget. And then this last bar graph shows a comparison of countywide expenditures from 2022 to 23. And once again, you can see the large category of public works, which much of which is attributed to the County M project. So that big red bar right there in the middle. All right, and circling back to the overall property tax levy. So if you recall, the property tax levy was roughly 25% of the total revenues and total property, and of the total property tax levy, around 60% is in the general fund. So 25% of total revenues is tax levy, and then in the general fund is 60% is tax levy. Followed by about 18% with the highway department, about 16% with health and human services department. Once again, due to rounding, it doesn't add up to 100%. So as the general fund is the largest category for property tax levy distribution, we further break down on this graph which departments in the general fund the levy is used for. So you can see that a majority of the tax levy goes to the sheriff's department. Not all of these pie slices are labeled, but this kind of just gives a brief look at which departments in the general fund are using most tax levy. And that is it. So budget books, we're gonna try to electronically distribute them by November 4th. And then just reach out to Cynthia if you have any questions on the budget or want to make any changes. At this point, we'll take questions.
Supervisor Crew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just process wise. Excuse me, so most of us, as the first budget we're working through, you mentioned earlier that we're looking to take that vote on the budget mid-November, so we're getting full materials.
On the 15th, right? So the full materials will be out on the 4th.
Okay, I just wanted to get that kind of nailed down, so we have time to review and stuff, so thanks, appreciate it.
Right, and as Kyle mentioned, I mean, the budget is balanced right now, so if you have concerns, talk to Cynthia or Kyle, and if you want to make any budget amendments, work through them so they can help you bring a balanced budget amendment, because we just can't increase the tax levy, so.
Been there, done that.
This is very shaky.
There's a category that says fines, forfeitures, and is there a,
Oh, yeah, it got cut off on the graph. Fines, forfeitures. Yeah, I think it's fines, forfeitures and fees.
and fees? Thank you.
Supervisor Barsky.
Kyle, you mentioned regarding health insurance and so forth, we talked about the individual increases and so forth. The county, as far as the actual dollars that we spend per family and what we spend per individual, could you go over that? And I know it's a 5% increase, that's what we talked about. But you have the dollar handy there as far as what the county pays for the health insurance.
Mr. Chair. Pulling it up right now for the dollar amounts. Hopefully everybody can't see what I'm pulling up. No. All right.
That's what you did last Saturday.
All right, so family health insurance is annual cost is about $19,500. And single is roughly $7,400. Annual.
Okay, and that's, when we talked about a 4% wage increase, this is over and above. The increase is over and above what we currently spending. Is that correct? All right. 19.5 is the increase. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the amount that
That's the amount.
we're paying next year.
Okay. And as far as the increase from one year, from last year till next year, that amounts to 5% of that, so.
Yeah, it was last year's.
But whatever, my point is, whatever that increase is over and above the increase in wages. That's not included in the wages, is that correct?
That'd be correct. The increase in health insurance, the additional cost of health insurance, the 4% wage increase is just wages. It's just
Okay. All in here, thanks.
I think I can help with that too. I think what I'm looking for is a number of what would be the total package of the health increase and the 4% when you compare it to the CPI 8.6.
Mr. Chair, so first we get a wage increase of 4%. Next consideration is the 5% increase in benefits. The county covers 85% of that cost. So the employee does not bear that majority of that increase. So Kyle shared with you numbers on an example of somebody who made 40,000 a year. And Kyle, so the net increase, if we consider 4% COLA And then the 5%, which is 15% of that 5% increase, that was a net of 3.9, 3.6. So instead of 4, it'd be 3.6.
That's going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Now, what Supervisor Pease is talking about is that there's an increase in the county's portion of the health insurance benefit. So that's really an additional increase in the total amount that we pay for an employee. So it's the 4% plus whatever the county is picking up. That's what you were trying to allude to. And it would be different for every employee, so there's not gonna be a straight percentage there, so. Supervisor Scott Pease.
Where it looked confusing, I called Cynthia separately, and it looks like we have a 4% increase, and then we raised their health insurance by 5%, so they're losing 1%, you know? I mean, that's what it looked like to me.
Supervisor Dole. And then,
I was gonna say that the 5% increase is on the cost of health insurance, not their income.
right. Supervisor Pozdowski.
Yeah, Kyle, back on, put it at the beginning there, you showed a slide with, nearly $20 million surplus, and you had the, figures all broken down. I'm just wondering more on where those funds came from. There was an $18 million figure I saw there, nearly of a surplus. It was early on in your presentation. Yeah, okay. That's it there.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, so the $19 million, that would be the total tax levy. That's gonna be the levy that is applied across all taxable parcels throughout the county.
Okay, you showing this as a surplus now, is that?
No, that,
I'm reading this right? Or-
no, so like, if you look at your tax bill, it's at the county portion,
Mhm.
and then you take everybody's tax bills in the county and add all those up, it'll add. Go.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Pease.
Kyle, you said something about the Cottonville Dam and 250,000, and we're gonna come out with capital. I thought we had a dam fund for that type of fixing. Is that where that's gonna be taken out of?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the repairs to the Cottonville Dam will be taken out of the capital project fund for land and water.
So that's the dam fund,
That's the
that's
dam.
part of their capital fund.
The only other capital that is in land and water is their vehicles, and I think there's some survey equipment. So mainly it's attributed to the dams. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll move on, but I'm sure the county manager or the finance director would answer any questions you have when you go through your packets and look at them, so. Okay. Next, we'll go through committee minutes, any discussion. One of the items I would like to bring up is on the admin and finance on October 7th. I know the discussion came up at county board meeting last month was about the runway project out at the airport. We did have a Bureau of Aeronautics, Josh Holbrook, come and talk to the admin and finance committee. So if you have questions on that or want to see that, instead of inviting him back here again, look at that recording. So he went through it in very good detail and provided a bunch of answers to us. And if you have anything after you view that, you could probably ask the county manager. We could get additional questions answered on that. So we're ready to go around. Yeah. He's on the video. Any questions on any of the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to ordinances when the clerk is ready with ordinance number 21.
Ordinance 21, 2022, amendment of the Adams County zoning ordinance to rezone a portion of parcel from A1 15 exclusive agriculture to A3 secondary agriculture in the town of New Chester. Recommended for enactment by the Adams County Planning and Zoning Committee on the 5th day of October 2022. Gilmer, Churko, Kozel, Knapper, Shavy, Pavilion, Ethan.
Motion to enact by Supervisor Gilman. Second by Supervisor Sherko. Ordinance number 21 is on the floor. Supervisor Kowarski and then Supervisor McLaughlin have questions.
Yeah, thanks. My question has to do with the location of that. I did look up section 20, and that's in the middle of an irrigation field near the pivot. Unless, I can't believe they updated sections to change them. And it also talks about, where is it, 2760 County Road G, and section 20 does not even come close to County G, so somebody needs to clear that up for me, please.
Dusty, if you want to.
I am on the line. The resolution that was submitted should be the correct version. I'm trying to get to it right now. It is in the town of Newchester, excuse me.
Section 20, this is Bob again, meets 6th Avenue. At least according to my plan.
Now, if the board will bear with me 1 second, I will get to the parcel mapping. I know the map is attached to the resolution as well. I am almost there.
And while you're looking at them. Supervisor McLaughlin, what was your question?
I actually took a glance when we were looking at the map, and my question was how many acres was that parcel to start with? It is 20, it was, so that answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
So the parcel number is, or the address of the property is 2760 County Road G. Parcel number is 20-594. I do see the error now. It is section 22. Not 20.
Mr. Chair, I move this be sent back to committee and brought back after it's corrected.
Okay. Well, we have a motion. We need a second to move it on. Second by Supervisor Rick Pease. That motion is on the floor, so. Supervisor Giller, comment?
We make a motion to make the change right here?
Can we make a motion to make the change right here?
No, it needs to be prepared before it's done.
So, I mean, we're discussing motion to
Right, send back.
send back to committee.
I think a motion to make the change right here, not send it back to.
Well, we gotta. That motion's out of order because we have to address the motion and something.
Correct.
Yes, so,
Mr. Chair, this is a question for Corp Counsel. Would it be appropriate and legal to change the number?
but we have to address the motion on the floor right now.
Well, I think we're discussing the motion, right?
So
So,
we might not be able to, maybe it's not debatable.
okay.
Sales students, you wanna, your parliamentary procedure, you got any, no? So did you have a comment? It is debatable, so we'll debate, send it back to committee, so. You see where you're shaping?
So, Mr. Chair, I guess my next question is it legal to just change it from 20 to 22 in this setting?
You can amend it.
Because we're amending the agenda then, right?
Well, no, you don't.
And we're amending, well, we're
You're amending
amending
the
both, we're amending the ordinance, which would subsequently be on this agenda, which would amend the agenda also. Right, maybe?
No.
Okay, all right, so then just the ordinance.
Supervisor McCollum,
I have to point out.
please use your microphone so people, thank you.
Right now, the motion on a second on the floor. That should be acted on, and we're not discussing it. What's being discussed is, can you do it legally without that? That isn't the point.
No, the motion on the floor right now.
No, I know what,
Send back to committee.
that's my point. What's being talked about, though, is can you legally change it here? That's not what's on the floor. Why don't we vote on what's on the floor?
Okay,
May I?
well, as long as it's a discussion about.
It is, Mr. Chair,
Send it back to committee.
I guess I won't vote to send it back to committee if we can fix it on the floor. So that is why I'm asking,
Right.
can you fix it on the floor?
I amend my original motion.
No, we can't, not at this time. Okay. Okay, just one second. The clerk's going to add that motion in so we can vote on it electronically, so, on that motion, so.
Sure.
Supervisor Varsky?
Just, I'm concerned that things don't come here accurately on occasion, and I think to send a message, this thing should be sent back to.
Okay, so the motion is to send back to committee, so a yes vote would be for sending back to committee, and no vote would be not sending it back to committee.
Total votes 19, 14 yes, 5 no. Gilner, Kozel, Trevillio, Eagersdorf, West. Dale. Both no.
Supervisor McLaughlin.
I'm close to wrong, but I'm trying to vote no. Colorblind side or whatever.
Please change that vote. That would change the votes to 13-5, so motion passes, so ordinance number 21 will be referred back to the committee to be brought back. When the clerk is ready, we'll go on to ordinance number 22.
Ordinance 22-2022, amendment of the Adams County zoning ordinance to rezone parcel 40 acres from A1 exclusive agriculture to A3 secondary agriculture 10 acres and an A1 15 exclusive agriculture 30 acres in the town of Belle Prairie. Recommended for enactment by the Adams County Planning and Zoning Committee on the 5th day of October 2022. Gilner, Churko, Dozel, Nodreiner, Shapey, Trevelio, Easton.
Motion to enact by Supervisor Gilman. The second by Supervisor Baylor, so ordinance number 22 is on the floor. Any discussion or questions? Okay. Seeing none, please vote. 1 second, please. Okay, please vote.
Total votes 19 yes. 2 Sale yes, Wimmer excused.
Ordinance number 22 is enacted. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to ordinance number 23.
Ordinance 23, 2022, amendment to the Adams County zoning ordinance. Rezone a portion of parcel 12 acres from A1 exclusive agriculture to A3 secondary agriculture in the town of Springville. Recommended for enactment by the Adams County Planning and Zoning Committee on the 5th day of October 2022. Gilner, Churko, Dozel, Nodreiner, Shapey, Trevelio, Easton.
Did you put the right resolution?
Yeah, can you get the first one? Twenty-three. Let's see, 22. Okay.
Motion to enact by Supervisor Gilman. Second by Supervisor Baylor. So motion, ordinance number 23 is on the floor. Supervisor McLaughlin.
I'm sorry, the rezoning is to go from A1 35 to A1 15. No. Okay, I can't. I didn't remember what it said. So it's A1 15, and how many acres are being rezoned? What's the size of the parcel?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes, please.
the rezone portion is 12 acres. The remaining portion is 17. The 17 acres would not get rezoned. On the certified survey map, the proposed certified survey map attached to the agenda shows the portion that would be rezoned. A115 doesn't allow you to create a parcel less than 15 acres, and that's why they are proposing to rezone the lot 1.
Okay, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Please vote on ordinance number 23.
Total votes 19 yes. 0 no, winner excused. 2 Zale, yes.
Ordinance number 23 is enacted. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to ordinance number 24.
Ordinance 24, 2022, amendment of the Adams County zoning ordinance, rezone parcel from A1 35 exclusive agriculture from farmland preservation to A1 15 exclusive agriculture in the town of New Haven. Recommended for enactment by the Adams County Planning and Zoning Committee on the 5th day of October 2022. Gilner, Churko, Ozel, Notreiner, Shakey, Carvillo, Deason.
Motion is enacted by Supervisor Gilman, second by Supervisor Churko. Ordinance number 24 is on the floor. Any discussion or questions? Supervisor Barson.
Just a quick question. I've asked this before, regarding the farmland preservation that had tax advantages, or I guess the question is, did it, and is this legal to go ahead and take it out of it now?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Farmland preservation is an income tax credit. It doesn't have to do with property taxes. We are allowed to rezone property out of farmland preservation. The downside to the property owner is that they are no longer eligible to claim farmland preservation tax credit on their income taxes. We can rezone that. We do need to notify DATCAP at the end of every year of all the acreage that we do rezone out. But it is legal to do.
Yes, Supervisor Barson.
Yeah, Dusty, so that's the credit toward the income tax, not property tax. Is that correct?
Correct. If they choose to participate in the program, I don't believe these owners do. There are a couple of other requirements necessary to participate in the program.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, please vote.
Total vote 19 yes. Winner excused. Zale, yes.
Okay. Ordinance number 24 is enacted. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to resolutions. Resolution number 65.
Resolution 65, 2022, resolution recognizing second amendment rights of the citizens of Adams County, Wisconsin, introduced by the County Board Supervisor Jody Shapey, recommended for adoption by County Board Supervisor Jody Shapey this 11th day of October 2022. Shapey.
Okay. Supervisor Shapey, motion to adopt. Second by Supervisor Crew. So resolution number 65 is on the floor. Any discussion or questions? Supervisor Shapey.
As a sponsor of Resolution 65, recognizing the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of Adams County, I'd like to share with you why I bring this resolution before the Adams County Board of Supervisors. It is my hope that as Adams County citizens first and elected officials second, that we can come together to support the right to protect and defend ourselves as law-abiding citizens. I know for myself and my family that our safety is of utmost importance, and I know that there are many people and families in our communities that feel the same way. I want our citizens to feel safe and secure, in their own home, on their own property, in their business, in their everyday lives. And if that is by choosing to keep and bear arms, then I am there for them. I fully support them in that need. There is so much going on in our world, things that could undermine our constitutional rights, particularly our ability to protect ourselves, that I believe it is important for us to affirm and go on record confirming that our law-abiding citizens have our support to keep and bear arms. I realize that there are times when our law enforcement cannot reach our location in time to intercede on our behalf, and that we may need to perform those duties ourselves. This resolution also further supports those law-abiding citizens that choose to pursue hunting, shooting sports, shooting competitions, collections, guarding their livestock from predation, recreating safely, etc. in our county. This resolution will indicate to our state government that our citizens' safety is one of our highest priorities, that their Second Amendment rights have significant meaning to us and have our support, and we do not want them infringed upon. Adams County is not the only county to support their citizens' Second Amendment rights. Clark, Dodge, Florence, Grant, Langley, Lafayette, Marquette, Monroe, Oneida, Ozaki, Polk, Rusk, Sawyer, Shawano, Vilas, Washburn, Washington, Waukesha, and Wood are all counties in Wisconsin that have chosen to support their citizens. So I ask you on the behalf of our Adams County citizens, present and future, may you please join me in supporting this resolution to recognize the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of Adams County. Thank you.
Any other discussion or questions? Supervisor Edwards?
Yes, Mr. Chair. My mic on.
No.
There we go. I don't favor this, resolution. Because as we presented at the last time this was brought before the county board, that we support all of the, Constitution, all of the rights that are guaranteed with that. And this is just picking out one right versus the many. I feel like our citizenry is already protected by what we have under law.
Supervisor Repeats and then Supervisor Taylor.
I agree with Marge. Last time we had this vote, we didn't approve this, but of course, we have many different supervisors at this time. If you watch the news at all, depending on what you watch, all the amendments are under attack at the current time, from freedom of speech that lets us talk about this amendment, to voting rights, to all the rights of citizenry are being contested in courts across our nation. So to put one above the other, I think is wrong. I think in April, when we raise our hands and vote to defend the Constitution, we're telling our citizenry that we are defending them. If a different amendment came up and it was just for voting rights, I feel the same way. I would vote no also, because it doesn't include all our rights. I applaud Ms. Chafee for writing it. I read this. This is a very good resolution for what she wants. And I even try to think, could I do a friendly amendment to possibly include all the amendments? I can, not the way it's written, because it's written so well. So I understand why we all want to do this, why most people in this room want to do this. But as a gun owner right now, I don't feel that my rights are being infringed upon any more than anyone else rights. So I will vote no on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the Second Amendment has been challenged in both our United States Supreme Court and our Wisconsin State Court. And both times it's been upheld. But the Second Amendment has been under attack again and again. This is a simple resolution saying that we stand with it. And I ask the question, if you're willing to vote against this resolution, what other parts of our Constitution are you willing to vote against?
Supervisor Scott Pete.
I have the same question back to you. Shouldn't we be voting that we support all of the Constitution and all the amendments?
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, please vote.
Total votes 19, 13 yes, 6 no. SPs, Bork, Edwards, RPs, Mullins, Carlson. Sale, yeah.
Resolution number 65 is adopted. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to resolution number 66.
Resolution 66 twenty twenty-two, resolution for surface water protection grant, healthy lakes and rivers, introduced by the Land and Water UWX Committee. Recommended for adoption by the Land and Water and UWX Committee the 4th day of October 2022. Shaky, Wimmer, Mullins, Krug, McLaughlin, Olson.
Motion to adopt by Supervisor Crew, second by Supervisor Mullins. Resolution number 66 is on the floor. Any discussion or questions?
Mr. Chair,
Supervisor Zaborski?
until the clerk read those names, I can only read 2 of them. It would be really nice if we would write legibly so we could actually read who signed it. Otherwise, maybe we should type underneath each one so they can sign over their name.
Thanks for the comment. So seeing no further comments, please vote on resolution number 66.
Total votes 19, 17 yes, 2 no. Adowski, Eagersdorf, Wimmer excused. Sale, yeah.
Resolution number 66 is adopted. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to resolution number 67.
Resolution 67 twenty twenty-two, resolution for surface water protection grant, surface water education, introduced by Land and Water and UWX Committee. Recommended for adoption by the Land and Water UWX Committee this 4th day of October 2022. Chafee, Wimmer, Mullins, Olson, McLaughlin, Krug.
Motion to adopt by Supervisor Crew, second by Supervisor Mullins. Resolution number 67 is on the floor. Any discussion or questions? Supervisor Crew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't intend to speak on these, but these last 2 are pretty important for not only for Rome, but for anywhere that have lake-based tourism in Adams County, which is probably one of our biggest. These grants are highly important to the success of those programs, to keeping our lakes clean and people happy coming to Adams County.
Supervisor Repeat.
Do you know what our share of the 33% of eligible project costs are?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Sure, go right ahead, Dustin, please.
what the total grant amount, our share of that would end up being about $4,000 roughly. It was put into the budget for this expenditure based on the assumption, or if this would pass.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, my question would be, should that be included in the fiscal amount? That is going to be about roughly approximately $4,000 and would be in the 2023 budget.
Can we amend it?
Yeah, we can amend it. I'm just asking, it should be on, in there,
Yes,
right?
I
Okay.
made note.
Okay.
I would make that amendment then.
Okay, so the amendment would be to add behind project costs would be approximately
$4,000.
to be included in the 2023 budget there. And, okay, so we got the motion, the second for that amendment, so. Any discussion on that amendment? Okay, so the clerk added the motion, so please vote on that motion.
Total votes 19, 18 yes, 1 no, Podolsky, Sale, yes, Wimmer excused.
Okay, so the amendment is approved. Do we have any discussion, further discussion on the amended resolution? Okay. And the clerk is ready to vote on the amended resolution. The resolution is amended. Please vote.
Total votes 19, 18 yes, 1 no, Podolsky, Sale, yes.
Resolution number 67 is adopted as amended, so. When the clerk is ready, we'll move on to resolution number 68.
Resolution 68, 2022, resolution to designate public depositories introduced by the Admin and Finance Committee, recommended for adoption by the Admin and Finance Committee the 7th day of October 2022. West Taylor, Gabarsky, SPs, RPs.
Motion to adopt by Supervisor Kowarski, second by Supervisor Edwards. Any discussion or questions on resolution number 68? Okay. Seeing none, please vote.
Total votes 19, 18 yes, 1 no, Dolzel, excused Wimmer, Sale, yes.
Supervisor.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. I apologize.
Thank you. Clerk will change that vote. So we had 19 yes. So resolution is 68 in the document. We have no denials or petitions. Do I have a motion to approve claims which previously read by the clerk? Supervisor Bork, second by Supervisor Pavilio. Any discussion or question on claims? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Claims are approved. And the clerk is ready. Please read for demon mileage.
Sherco 44325, Taylor 43133, Dillner 28375, Wimmer 25875, SP 465, Podolsky 550, JP 40128, Pavilio 18375, Eager Source 17250, Ford 16125, Edwards 220, RCs 245, West 350, Holmes 20688, Gabarsky 25250, Carlson 25125, Proof 41625, Baker 21125, McLaughlin 52625,
Minkowski 320, David 55, Coe 95, VPs 110, Robertson 240, Hines 6875, Townsend 55, Wah 55, Worth 8625, total 7,115.24.
Motion to approve per diem amounts. Supervisor Rick P, second by Supervisor Scott P. Discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Per diem amounts are approved. Supervisor Gilman,
County clerk to correct any and all errors and to read back the next meeting if so requested.
second by Supervisor Carlson, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion is passed. Next meeting date is November 15th at 9:30 a.m. That is a morning meeting at 9:30 a.m. So. Yes. Okay, Supervisor McLaughlin.
But it's more, it said 10:30 on calendar.
Yeah, it might have said 10:34, but it was said at 6 o'clock, but it is 9:30, so. Okay, thank you all. Have a good evening.